You're listening to an exclusive production from Valio, All or Nothing Authority, The Weight of Total Command, Chapter 1. The Burden of Leadership, Awareness Before Mastery. Leadership is rarely as simple as it appears from the outside. The image others hold of those in command, the confidence, the decisiveness, the apparent certainty, often conceals a deeper, heavier truth. Authority carries a weight that is silent, invisible to those who benefit from it, and yet it is relentless. Every choice, every directive, every decision ripples outward. Success or failure does not belong solely to the individual being led. It lands squarely on your shoulders. To lead is to carry more than tasks, more than strategy. It is to carry the lives, the ambitions, the trust, and sometimes even the fears of others. This weight is not always measured in concrete outcomes. It is measured in tension, in the constant awareness of what is at stake. Every pause, every hesitation, every miscalculation can ripple into real consequences. Those who have never held authority often imagine that leadership is about command, about control, about giving orders and watching them executed. In reality, leadership is a quiet vigilance. It is an unspoken contract, a continuous negotiation with oneself to remain present, decisive, and ethical, even when the cost is personal. When you first step into the role of responsibility, the burden may feel abstract. You might feel a sense of exhilaration at the scope of influence, the opportunity to shape outcomes, the ability to drive change. But soon, the exhilaration collides with the immensity of accountability. You are no longer free to act solely according to desire or instinct. Every action you take is intertwined with the lives and expectations of others. Every word can inspire or wound. Every silence can empower or destabilize. Understanding this duality is the first step toward mastering the kind of authority that demands both vigilance and wisdom. The emotional terrain of leadership is just as demanding as the strategic. It is often a private battlefield. You may feel isolation, even among a team or community that relies on you. Your vision and decisiveness set you apart, creating an invisible barrier between you and those who follow. The higher the responsibility, the more acute the solitude becomes. It is a quiet, almost paradoxical truth. The more you protect and guide others, the more you must guard your own equilibrium. You cannot give what you do not sustain. Leadership demands an internal resilience that matches the external pressure. At the same time, the burden is inseparable from potential. Authority is power in its rawest, most transformative form. To wield it effectively is to create conditions where others can flourish, where ideas can take shape, and where outcomes can reflect vision rather than mere circumstance. But potential is not a free gift. It requires readiness. You cannot inspire or direct without first cultivating clarity of thought, integrity of action, and an unwavering commitment to the responsibilities that follow. The mind of a leader is in constant motion. Decisions are rarely isolated. They are intersections of risk, consequence, and ethics. You weigh the immediate against the long term, the practical against the principled, the visible against the hidden. Every choice becomes a delicate balance between action and restraint, between control and flexibility. The mental rigor demanded of leadership is unrelenting. A single lapse can cascade into larger consequences, not just for those you lead, but for your own sense of purpose and stability. This is why awareness is fundamental. To step fully into command is to recognize the enormity of the responsibility before you even attempt to shoulder it. Emotional vigilance is equally crucial. Leadership is a crucible for temperament. Pressure, criticism, and unforeseen obstacles test the strength of character at every turn. The burden is not just what you must do, but how you must be, calm under fire, precise in judgment, patient in execution, and resilient when confronted with resistance or failure. There is no shortcut around this, no way to delegate the inner work. A leader must cultivate a presence that reassures without controlling, that commands respect without breeding fear, that inspires action without creating dependency. This awareness extends to understanding yourself as much as understanding the people you lead. The gravity of authority can amplify weaknesses as quickly as it magnifies strengths. Impulsiveness, indecision, or a need for approval can compromise not just outcomes, but trust. Conversely, discipline, insight, and clarity enhance every decision you make, every interaction you have. Leadership demands the courage to confront your own shadows, to acknowledge uncertainty, and to act with integrity even when the easier path is to compromise. Responsibility is never partial. The higher you ascend, the more comprehensive the demand. You may find yourself carrying burdens that are invisible to others, ethical dilemmas, strategic calculations, or the emotional weight of those depending on your judgment. These are not burdens anyone else can bear for you. Attempts to evade them, even temporarily, often create more profound consequences later. Acceptance, rather than avoidance, is the mark of the enduring leader. At times, the weight may feel almost unbearable. You may question your capacity, wonder if the stakes are too high, or fear that a single misstep could unravel the work of months, years, or even decades. These moments are not signs of weakness. They are signs that you are fully engaged in the depth of responsibility that authority demands. The true measure of leadership is not the absence of fear or doubt, but the ability to act decisively and ethically in their presence. A leader's life is defined by tension between control and surrender. You control what you can, the strategy, the directives, the clarity of communication. You must surrender to what you cannot, the responses of others, unforeseen events, and the complexity of circumstances that lie beyond your grasp. This duality is not a flaw but a necessity. Mastery emerges not from absolute control, but from skillful navigation of the forces you can influence while adapting to those you cannot. As you step fully into this understanding, you begin to see leadership as both weight and privilege. The weight is undeniable. Every decision, every action, every word carries consequence. The privilege is profound. You have the capacity to shape outcomes, to create environments where people thrive, and to leave a mark that endures beyond your immediate presence. To carry the burden wisely is to transform it into a source of purpose rather than a source of fear. Leadership demands preparation, not only in skill but in spirit. You must cultivate awareness, emotional steadiness, and ethical clarity before attempting to wield authority fully. This preparation is ongoing, evolving with each challenge and triumph. The leader's journey is iterative. Each decision tests resolve, each responsibility strengthens capacity, and each challenge reveals areas for growth. There is no end point, only continuous refinement. At its core, the burden of leadership is an invitation. It calls you to deeper engagement with yourself, with others, and with the consequences of your actions. It demands presence, vigilance, and courage, but it also offers transformation. When you embrace the weight, you find clarity. When you accept responsibility, you discover influence. When you confront the cost, you uncover the profound satisfaction of purposeful command. The journey begins with awareness. Recognize the gravity of your role. Understand the stakes. Observe how your decisions resonate outward, shaping the lives and experiences of those you lead. Prepare your mind, fortify your character, and steady your emotions. Authority is not a right to be claimed. It is a responsibility to be earned continuously and deliberately. In the stillness that follows acknowledgement, there is a subtle power, the power of readiness. When you carry the weight consciously, when you honor the responsibility before you, leadership ceases to be a source of fear and becomes a source of clarity. You begin to operate from a place of insight rather than reaction, from presence rather than anxiety. The burden transforms into a guiding force, shaping not only your actions, but your entire approach to influence and command. By embracing the depth of responsibility, you step into mastery. Not mastery over others, but mastery over the space you occupy, the decisions you make, and the energy you bring to every interaction. True leadership is never about domination. It is about presence, awareness, and unwavering commitment to the role you have accepted. When you internalize this, a quiet confidence emerges. You no longer act out of fear or ambition alone. You act with precision, with care, and with unwavering attention to the lives and outcomes entrusted to you. Authority becomes less about assertion and more about stewardship. Every choice carries weight, but it is chosen with discernment. Every action has consequence, but it is guided by insight. The burden is heavy, yet it is matched by the profound capacity to influence, to protect, and to create. Leadership is never light, but it is transformative. The first step toward mastery is simple yet profound. Recognize the weight before you claim the mantle of authority. Step forward consciously, carry the burden deliberately, and embrace the responsibility fully. In doing so, you do not simply lead. You shape, you safeguard, and you leave a legacy defined not by fear, but by purpose, clarity, and unwavering resolve. The measure of your authority is not how much you control, but how fully you carry the weight you have been given, with awareness, integrity, and deliberate strength. Step into this truth, and you begin the journey not only of leadership, but of enduring mastery. Chapter 2. The cost of all or nothing when extremes in control threaten success. Leadership can feel like a battlefield at times, not because of the people you guide, but because of the expectations you place on yourself. There is a seductive clarity in total control, a sense that if every decision passes through your hands, if every detail is perfected, nothing can go wrong. And yet this approach carries a hidden toll. Absolute authority, pursued without balance, often isolates, exhausts, and even undermines the very outcomes it is meant to secure. To lead without compromise, without delegation, without tempering your intensity, is to flirt with burnout and diminished impact. The first cost of extreme control is isolation. When you insist that only your standards matter, you create distance between yourself and those you lead. People may comply, but they will rarely invest fully in your vision. Engagement thrives on trust and shared responsibility. When one person dominates every decision, others step back, consciously or unconsciously, shrinking their contribution to avoid conflict or failure. Isolation is subtle at first. It creeps in through quiet moments when feedback is absent, when collaboration is stifled, when the weight of every choice rests on your shoulders alone. Over time, it transforms into loneliness, a private burden that no success can fully offset. Perfectionism is another heavy price to pay. The desire for flawless execution can energize initial efforts, but left unchecked, it becomes a trap. You scrutinize every outcome, second-guess every action, and demand impossibly high standards not only from others, but from yourself. Perfectionism consumes energy, attention, and time. It creates endless cycles of revision, correction, and doubt. No project, no team, no strategy can sustain such intensity indefinitely. Eventually, the obsession with perfect control blinds you to progress, to opportunities, and even to the growth of those around you. The pursuit of perfection often becomes the enemy of effective leadership. Stress, both emotional and physical, is inevitable when authority is all-consuming. The mind becomes a relentless engine of calculation. Every decision, every potential outcome, every worst-case scenario occupies space and energy. Sleep, clarity, and emotional equilibrium suffer as a result. The body responds to sustained pressure in ways that are subtle and insidious. Fatigue, tension, irritability, and the creeping sense that nothing is ever enough. Leaders who ignore these signals risk more than personal health. They risk impaired judgment at moments when decisive action is critical. The cost of all-or-nothing leadership is rarely visible until it manifests in error, conflict, or failure. Another dimension of this cost is the erosion of trust. When authority is exercised with rigidity, when every detail is claimed as your own, others begin to feel undervalued. Even the most competent team members grow frustrated, uncertain, or resentful. Trust is fragile, and it thrives on autonomy, recognition, and meaningful contribution. By refusing to share responsibility or to allow space for others' judgment, a leader inadvertently undermines the very foundation of influence. Control without collaboration is control without loyalty. Without loyalty, authority is brittle. Decision-making itself suffers under extreme authority. When a single individual absorbs every responsibility, cognitive load becomes overwhelming. Even with intelligence, experience, and preparation, human capacity is finite. Important signals may be missed, contextual nuances overlooked, opportunities pass unnoticed. When control is concentrated to the extreme, the clarity that initially drew you to leadership begins to fracture under the weight of detail, consequence, and constant vigilance. The irony is profound. The more you try to safeguard success through absolute command, the more fragile your position can become. Emotional intensity is another consequence often underestimated. Leaders who pursue all-or-nothing authority frequently carry a sense of personal identification with every outcome. Success is validation. Failure is a reflection of inadequacy. The highs are exhilarating, the lows devastating. The psychological stakes are extreme. This emotional volatility spreads subtly to the team, affecting morale, decision-making, and engagement. The leader becomes both the anchor and the storm, a duality that is difficult to maintain without profound self-awareness and discipline. The cost is compounded by time. Leadership is not measured merely in effort, but in the quality and strategic value of that effort. When control is extreme, time is consumed by micromanagement, correction, and constant monitoring. Energy that could be directed toward vision, innovation, and relationship building is instead expended on details that could be delegated. The paradox is clear. Attempting to control everything often leaves you controlling very little of what truly matters. Understanding these costs is not a call to relinquish authority. Total disengagement would be equally destructive. Rather, the lesson is in balance. Recognizing where control is necessary, where collaboration is essential, and where delegation strengthens both results and relationships is the mark of mature leadership. Authority is most effective when it is neither abandoned nor suffocating. It is purposeful, measured, and flexible. Self-reflection is critical in this process. Leaders must examine their motivations for controlling everything. Is it fear of failure, a need for recognition, distrust of others, or a drive for perfection? Identifying the root allows conscious management of tendencies toward overextension. Without this awareness, patterns repeat unconsciously, and the cycle of isolation, stress, and diminishing returns continues unchecked. Boundaries become a vital tool. They define what is yours to carry and what is meant for others. Clear boundaries prevent exhaustion, protect judgment, and maintain authority without overreach. When every responsibility is claimed personally, boundaries dissolve, leaving a leader exposed to fatigue and error. Learning to distinguish between what requires your direct attention and what thrives in the hands of capable others is a skill as critical as strategy or vision. Empowerment is not weakness, it is strategic strength. Allowing others to share responsibility creates resilience, innovation, and loyalty. Teams flourish when their contributions are acknowledged, when their decisions carry weight, and when they feel trusted. Leadership is amplified when authority is exercised in ways that enable, rather than dominate, those around you. When extremes of control are softened by trust and delegation, the entire system becomes stronger and more adaptive. Personal well-being is not secondary. The cost of neglecting your health, emotional balance, or personal life in pursuit of total authority is steep. Energy depletion, burnout, and resentment can erode not only leadership effectiveness, but the very relationships that make success meaningful. Sustainable authority depends on sustainable practice. The leader who prioritizes strategic rest, mental clarity, and emotional calibration protects both themselves and the mission they carry. Reflection is another safeguard. Periodic review of decisions, processes, and outcomes allows leaders to recognize patterns of overcontrol, to adjust, and to redirect effort where it is most impactful. Reflection provides perspective, helping leaders distinguish between urgency and importance, between micro-detail and macro-strategy. It is in these quiet, deliberate moments that wisdom grows, and the pitfalls of extreme authority are mitigated. The cost of all-or-nothing leadership is not only personal, it extends to the system, the organization, and the people you lead. When one person exerts excessive control, creativity is stifled, initiative is suppressed, and engagement diminishes. A team cannot reach its full potential under suffocating authority, and outcomes reflect the limitations imposed by the leader's overreach. Sustainable success is born from strategic delegation, measured control, and cultivated trust. In practice, this requires constant attention. Authority must be exercised with both firmness and flexibility. Boundaries must be clear but adaptive. Expectations should be high, yet tempered with realism. Emotional intensity must be channeled deliberately, so that it inspires rather than overwhelms. These are not simple adjustments. They are continuous calibrations that demand awareness, discipline, and courage. The paradox of extreme authority is that the very behaviors intended to secure outcomes often erode them. The most effective leaders are those who recognize the cost of overextension, who adjust, and who wield control strategically rather than obsessively. They understand that power is not an end in itself. It is a means to produce results, cultivate loyalty, and create conditions where others can excel. Authority exercised without balance, however, becomes a liability rather than an asset. Leadership is a mirror. The intensity you bring reflects in the team, the organization, and the outcomes. If you overextend, micromanage, or insist on perfection, that intensity manifests as pressure, fear, or stagnation. If you lead with presence, clarity, and calibrated control, it fosters confidence, initiative, and resilience. The choice is deliberate, not incidental. Recognizing the cost of extremes is the first step in consciously shaping the culture and outcomes of your authority. Ultimately, leadership is not about doing everything alone. It is about carrying responsibility wisely, sharing burden strategically, and maintaining influence without sacrificing sustainability. The cost of all-or-nothing authority is real, measurable, and often hidden until it reaches a tipping point. But awareness, reflection, and deliberate adjustment transform these costs from inevitable consequences into opportunities for refinement and growth. When authority is balanced, the leader operates with clarity rather than compulsion, with strategy rather than reaction, and with energy rather than depletion. The extremes of control give way to the steadiness of intentional influence, and the team flourishes under guidance that is firm, wise, and measured. The cost of leadership diminishes when authority is exercised not as ownership of everything, but as stewardship over what truly matters. The lesson is clear. Success is not in the claim to total command, but in the wisdom to wield authority in ways that sustain both the mission and those entrusted to you. Leadership is an act of ongoing calibration, a deliberate balance between control and trust, intensity and patience, responsibility and delegation. Recognizing the cost of extremes allows you to lead with endurance, impact, and a sense of purpose that transcends personal ambition. By understanding and integrating this balance, authority becomes not a weight to crush, but a tool to elevate. The cost is acknowledged, the burden managed, and the outcomes amplified. Leadership thrives when extremes are tempered, when vigilance is deliberate, and when every choice serves not only the mission, but the people and systems that make success possible. Authority is powerful, but its true strength lies not in unyielding control, but in measured, mindful, and strategic execution. When you embrace this, you step into leadership not as a relentless commander, but as a resilient, enduring force capable of guiding, inspiring, and sustaining both vision and people. Chapter 3. Balancing authority with vision, maintaining clarity amid responsibility. Authority without vision is like a ship without a rudder. It may move, it may act decisively, but it drifts without direction. True leadership requires more than command. It requires foresight, clarity, and the ability to see beyond the immediate horizon. Balancing authority with vision means that every decision, every action, and every influence is anchored in purpose. Without this alignment, control risks becoming aimless, and authority becomes a heavy burden rather than a guiding force. The first step in this balance is clarity of purpose. You must know not only what needs to be done, but why it matters. Vision is not a distant, abstract ideal. It is a framework that informs every choice. It allows you to distinguish between what is urgent and what is essential, between what is visible and what is strategic. Authority without this anchor becomes reactive, consumed by short-term pressures rather than long-term goals. When your decisions are guided by a coherent vision, authority becomes a tool for progress rather than an instrument of control. Vision demands foresight, but foresight alone is insufficient. It requires constant refinement, adaptability, and honest assessment of changing circumstances. The world does not stand still, and neither do the people, systems, and challenges you guide. To maintain alignment, you must continuously evaluate outcomes, anticipate obstacles, and adjust strategies. This does not mean abandoning authority. It means wielding it intelligently, with awareness that rigid control in the absence of adaptability is a liability. Strategic thinking is central to this balance. Every directive, every plan, every intervention should serve the larger vision. Authority exercised in isolation without connection to purpose can lead to wasted effort, friction within teams, and missed opportunities. When vision informs action, authority is both precise and effective. You are not busy merely for the sake of activity. You are deliberate, focused, and intentional. Every choice carries weight, but that weight is purposeful, and that purpose illuminates the path forward for both you and those who follow. Communication becomes a critical bridge between authority and vision. Those you lead must understand not only what is expected, but why it matters. Shared understanding fosters alignment, engagement, and trust. Authority without transparency risks confusion and resentment. Vision without clarity risks inaction or misinterpretation. As a leader, your role is to connect the directive with the reasoning, the goal with the process, and the immediate task with the larger outcome. In doing so, authority becomes not a force of compliance, but a force of collective movement toward meaningful objectives. Decision-making in this context shifts from reactive to intentional. You evaluate choices not merely by their immediate feasibility, but by how well they serve the overarching goals. Prioritization becomes an act of discernment rather than convenience. Delegation is guided by insight rather than relinquishment. Authority is exercised with focus and purpose, and every action contributes to a coherent trajectory. This alignment fosters both efficiency and impact, minimizing wasted effort and maximizing influence. The emotional dimension of leadership is intertwined with vision. When you are clear about your purpose, your authority gains steadiness. Doubt is tempered by understanding, and the pressure of responsibility becomes manageable rather than paralyzing. The weight of leadership does not disappear, but it becomes navigable. Emotional resilience emerges naturally when authority is exercised within a framework of clarity and foresight, allowing you to respond rather than react, to guide rather than control, and to inspire rather than command. Vision also requires honesty and humility. You must acknowledge what you do not know, anticipate unforeseen variables, and remain open to input from others. Authority exercised without receptivity is rigid and fragile. Authority exercised with awareness, guided by vision, is adaptive and durable. Leaders who integrate feedback, reflect on outcomes, and adjust strategies demonstrate mastery not only of their domain, but of themselves. They are authoritative not because they dominate, but because they navigate complexity with clarity and purpose. Focus is another essential aspect of this balance. The breadth of responsibility can be overwhelming, tempting leaders to intervene in every detail. Vision acts as a filter, helping to distinguish what truly matters from what merely demands attention. By concentrating authority on decisions that impact long-term outcomes, you preserve energy, maintain perspective, and amplify effectiveness. Authority without focus diffuses effort. Vision without focus remains abstract. Together, they create precision, impact, and sustainability. Conflict often arises when authority and vision are misaligned. Decisions made without connection to purpose can provoke resistance, confusion, or disengagement. Teams sense inconsistency or arbitrariness, and trust erodes. Conversely, when authority is exercised transparently and in alignment with a coherent vision, even difficult decisions are accepted because they are understood as part of a deliberate, purposeful path. The alignment between vision and authority is a stabilizing force, enabling leaders to act decisively while maintaining credibility and respect. Adaptability is essential to sustaining this balance. Vision is not static, and circumstances rarely unfold exactly as anticipated. Authority exercised rigidly in the face of change becomes brittle. Leaders must remain attentive, responsive, and willing to recalibrate strategies while remaining anchored in core principles. This requires confidence, discernment, and the ability to tolerate ambiguity without losing direction. Flexibility does not diminish authority. It enhances it, ensuring relevance, resilience, and continued progress. The integration of strategy, vision, and authority also safeguards against overextension. Leaders who focus on what aligns with long-term objectives avoid becoming consumed by peripheral concerns. This allows both mental clarity and emotional stability, reducing stress and preserving judgment. Authority becomes a tool for channeling energy where it is most effective, rather than a constant, draining demand on every aspect of life. Balance between control and vision is the key to sustainable leadership. Ethics and principle are inseparable from this alignment. Vision without integrity becomes hollow, and authority without principle becomes destructive. Leaders who act with ethical clarity reinforce trust, inspire loyalty, and create lasting influence. Authority gains weight and legitimacy when every decision, every directive, and every intervention is guided not only by what works, but by what is right. Vision provides the roadmap, authority provides the means, ethics provide the compass. Reflection is a continuous process. Regularly examining both actions and outcomes ensures that authority remains aligned with vision. Adjustments may be required, not as a sign of weakness, but as a demonstration of deliberate mastery. Leaders who pause, assess, and refine maintain effectiveness, clarity, and presence, even under pressure. This ongoing calibration is what transforms authority from mere control into purposeful influence. Leadership, when anchored in vision, is transformative. It enables action that is both decisive and principled. It turns responsibility from a burden into an instrument for meaningful impact. Those you lead feel direction, clarity, and confidence. Your presence as a leader becomes both stabilizing and inspiring, and your influence extends beyond immediate tasks into enduring outcomes. Authority becomes a channel for realizing potential rather than a weight that confines it. The challenge is constant: to maintain clarity amid complexity, to exercise authority with intention, and to adapt without losing purpose. Success is not measured by effort alone, but by alignment. The coherence between decisions, actions, and long-term objectives. Leaders who achieve this integration operate from a position of influence that is deliberate, enduring, and resilient. In practical terms, balancing authority with vision means establishing structures, processes, and habits that support both immediate and strategic goals. Clear priorities, well-communicated objectives, and thoughtful delegation allow authority to be exercised efficiently. Ongoing evaluation ensures that vision guides action rather than being obscured by operational noise. Emotional presence ensures that decisions are executed with both confidence and care. Ultimately, the measure of leadership is not simply the authority you wield, but how effectively that authority translates into progress toward meaningful outcomes. Vision and authority, when integrated, create clarity for both leader and team. They allow the weight of responsibility to be carried with purpose rather than burden, with confidence rather than fear, and with intentionality rather than reaction. When leadership is both authoritative and visionary, every action becomes deliberate, every decision purposeful, and every outcome aligned with long-term objectives. Authority is no longer an isolated force. It becomes a guiding energy that shapes environments, cultivates talent, and drives sustainable success. Vision anchors authority, giving it direction, meaning, and endurance. Leadership is a balance of presence and foresight, decisiveness and reflection, control and adaptability. By cultivating clarity amid responsibility, aligning action with vision, and integrating ethical and strategic judgment, you transform the weight of command into a source of precision, resilience, and influence. Authority becomes not only a role, but a deliberate, purposeful practice that guides both yourself and those you lead toward enduring outcomes. The path of leadership is not simple, but it is navigable. Authority finds strength when it is anchored in vision. Decisions gain purpose when they are informed by foresight. Challenges are met with clarity rather than confusion. By balancing authority with vision, you step into leadership not as a figure burdened by responsibility, but as a force capable of guiding, inspiring, and shaping outcomes with intentionality, wisdom, and enduring impact. Chapter 4. Emotional mastery under pressure, staying calm when the weight is heavy. Leadership is a constant test of composure. The higher the responsibility, the more relentless the scrutiny, the greater the pressure. Decisions arrive with urgency, consequences ripple outward instantly, and the expectations of others, both seen and unseen, press in relentlessly. It is not enough to act decisively. A leader must also manage the inner climate of emotion, maintaining equilibrium even when every circumstance seems designed to provoke doubt, fear, or frustration. Emotional mastery is not a luxury. It is an essential tool of effective command. The first step in cultivating emotional mastery is awareness. Pressure can take many forms: external stressors, internal anxieties, interpersonal conflicts, or the sheer magnitude of responsibility. Often, leaders are unaware of how these forces affect their decision-making, communication, and presence. Left unchecked, stress becomes reactive energy, influencing tone, judgment, and behavior in ways that undermine authority and clarity. Awareness means noticing the stirrings of tension before they dominate thought, acknowledging emotions without judgment, and recognizing how they manifest physically, mentally, and behaviorally. Self-regulation is the foundation of emotional control. This is not suppression, but management. The ability to experience intense feelings without allowing them to dictate action. Leaders under pressure must maintain clarity of mind and steadiness of behavior. Techniques for regulation vary, but the principle is universal. Slow the response, observe the emotion, and respond intentionally rather than react impulsively. A leader who can hold composure in the face of provocation or chaos models stability for the team, reassuring those who look to them for guidance and setting the tone for rational decision-making. Decision-making under stress is particularly vulnerable to distortion. Fear, frustration, or anger can cloud judgment, skew priorities, or lead to reactive choices. Leaders who cultivate emotional mastery create a buffer between stimulus and response. They recognize that urgency is not always synonymous with importance, that intensity does not equate to clarity, and that pressure can be managed strategically rather than endured passively. Mastery is reflected not in the absence of stress, but in the ability to operate with precision despite it. Awareness also involves understanding triggers. Pressure often amplifies vulnerabilities or unresolved tensions. Recognizing which circumstances provoke heightened emotion allows a leader to prepare, anticipate, and adjust. These triggers are not weaknesses, they are signals. They indicate where focus is required, where resilience can be strengthened, and where response must be deliberate. Leaders who study their own reactions develop foresight, enabling them to navigate challenges without being swept away by emotion. Presence is a crucial element. When a leader projects calm, confidence, and focus, the effect is contagious. Teams take their cues from emotional tone, and uncertainty spreads faster than instruction. Leaders who maintain composed presence under stress inspire trust and stability, creating an environment where problem-solving, collaboration, and resilience can flourish. Presence does not erase difficulty, but it frames it, allowing those involved to approach challenges from a position of strength rather than panic. Techniques for sustaining emotional mastery include deliberate pacing, controlled breathing, and mental rehearsal. Slowing the body and mind in moments of intensity provides clarity and access to rational thought. Pausing before responding, visualizing outcomes, and breaking complex problems into manageable steps reduce overwhelm and allow for thoughtful action. Emotional mastery is not innate. It is cultivated through consistent practice, reflection, and disciplined response. Resilience is an outcome of mastery. Leaders face setbacks, criticism, and unexpected obstacles. Those who have developed control over their emotional responses do not collapse under pressure. They recover, adapt, and continue forward. Resilience allows mistakes to be addressed without panic, challenges to be reframed as opportunities, and tension to become a motivator rather than a drain. Authority is strengthened when the leader's emotional state supports constructive action rather than reactive energy. Empathy, when combined with emotional mastery, enhances leadership. Understanding the emotions of others, stress, fear, frustration, or doubt, allows a leader to respond effectively, not just strategically. Emotional intelligence provides insight into interpersonal dynamics, fostering loyalty, collaboration, and morale. Mastery of self enables mastery in relationships. Leaders who can manage their own state are better equipped to guide others through theirs. Pressure often magnifies extremes, impulsivity, perfectionism, or overreaction. Leaders must recognize these tendencies and develop strategies to counteract them. Reflective practice, journaling, or mentoring can provide external perspective, allowing leaders to assess responses objectively. Feedback from trusted colleagues or advisors acts as a mirror, revealing blind spots that emotional intensity can obscure. The disciplined integration of insight, reflection, and adaptation is key to sustainable mastery under pressure. Mindset plays a central role. Leaders who view pressure as a test rather than a threat harness energy productively. They recognize that intensity does not signal weakness but opportunity, an occasion to demonstrate skill, composure, and strategic thinking. Emotional mastery is thus both defensive and generative. It shields judgment from distortion while enabling action that is deliberate, confident, and effective. Boundaries are another vital component. Not every challenge requires immediate response, and not every emotional reaction demands expression. Discernment about what to engage with, and when, protects energy and preserves clarity. Leaders who overextend emotionally risk fatigue and impaired judgment. Mastery involves choosing where to invest attention and intensity, ensuring that response is purposeful rather than reactionary. Accountability intersects with emotional mastery. Leaders who own their feelings and their responses cultivate authority. that is both credible and sustainable. Excusing emotional lapses, blaming circumstances, or projecting stress onto others undermines trust and influence. Taking responsibility for the inner state reinforces stability, models integrity, and supports an environment where challenges are addressed constructively. Visualization and rehearsal can enhance mastery. Preparing mentally for high-pressure scenarios allows leaders to anticipate responses, recognize potential pitfalls, and rehearse calm, decisive action. These practices reduce the impact of surprise and uncertainty, turning what might be overwhelming into an opportunity for demonstration of skill, resilience, and foresight. Mastery is built in preparation, exercised in the moment, and reinforced in reflection. Patience is often tested under pressure, yet it is a cornerstone of effective leadership. Emotional mastery allows leaders to tolerate ambiguity, uncertainty, and delay without compromising composure. It creates space for thoughtful assessment, measured response, and strategic action. Impatience is a vulnerability. Patience is a strength. The ability to remain steady in the face of urgency differentiates reactive authority from purposeful leadership. Stress is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Leaders who develop mastery over emotion do not eliminate pressure. They navigate it with skill. They recognize the difference between intensity and crisis, between urgency and distraction. Emotional mastery allows them to act decisively when required, conserve energy when possible, and maintain perspective throughout. This clarity transforms pressure from a burden into an instrument of focus, insight, and influence. Integration of emotional and strategic mastery is transformative. A leader who can manage self under pressure can also guide teams through uncertainty. Decisions become clear, communication remains precise, and influence expands. Authority is no longer fragile or reactive. It is steady, intentional, and effective. The combination of composure and decisiveness strengthens both outcomes and relationships, creating a foundation for enduring leadership. Reflection closes the loop. After pressure has passed, leaders benefit from examining responses, outcomes, and emotional patterns. This assessment is not about judgment or regret. It is about learning, refinement, and preparation for future challenges. Each high-pressure experience becomes an opportunity to deepen mastery, reinforce resilience, and enhance both personal and organizational performance. The essence of emotional mastery under pressure is self-command. It is the ability to experience stress, intensity, and challenge without being dominated by them. It is the capacity to maintain clarity, act with discernment, and influence outcomes positively even when external forces threaten equilibrium. Leaders who cultivate this mastery create stability for themselves and for all who depend on them, transforming potential chaos into opportunity for decisive action. Authority, when paired with emotional mastery, becomes resilient, credible, and inspiring. The burden of responsibility remains, but it is carried with steadiness, presence, and strategic calm. Teams respond to composure with trust. Decisions gain clarity and influence deepens. Mastery of emotion under pressure is both a shield and a tool. It protects judgment while empowering action, guiding leaders to navigate the weight of responsibility with wisdom, precision, and endurance. When emotional mastery becomes habitual, pressure ceases to intimidate. Challenges are met with measured confidence. Decisions are executed with clarity and integrity. Authority is exercised not in reaction, but in deliberate alignment with purpose. Leaders become not only effective but enduring, capable of sustaining influence, inspiring loyalty, and navigating complexity with composure and insight. In the crucible of leadership, emotional mastery is the defining edge. It transforms intensity from a threat into a resource, aligns action with vision, and reinforces both credibility and effectiveness. The leader who carries responsibility with calm precision not only survives pressure, but thrives under it, turning weight into leverage, challenge into opportunity, and authority into purposeful influence. Chapter 5. The power of delegation, sharing burden without losing control. Leadership is often misunderstood as the relentless exercise of control. The prevailing image is of a solitary figure steering every detail, commanding every action, and making every decision. While this vision may appeal to ambition, it is neither sustainable nor strategic. Authority is not measured by how much one does personally, but by how effectively one orchestrates the energy, skill, and initiative of others. Delegation is not a compromise of control. It is a deliberate, powerful tool that amplifies influence, preserves energy, and cultivates loyalty. The first principle of effective delegation is clarity. Before entrusting responsibility, a leader must know precisely what outcome is required, what parameters define success, and what authority accompanies the task. Delegation is not an abdication of responsibility. It is an extension of it. You remain accountable for results, but you allow others to act within defined boundaries. Clarity ensures that delegated tasks align with vision, strategy, and standards without demanding unnecessary oversight. Trust is essential. Delegation is impossible without confidence in the abilities and judgment of those entrusted with responsibility. Building trust requires discernment. You must know not only who is capable, but who is reliable under pressure, who can act decisively, and who will uphold the integrity of your standards. Trust does not eliminate accountability. It establishes the framework within which authority can be exercised by multiple hands. Without trust, delegation collapses into micromanagement or fear-driven oversight. Delegation begins with preparation. Identify the strengths, experience, and growth potential of your team members. Assign tasks that stretch their abilities while remaining achievable. Provide guidance, resources, and context, but avoid the temptation to overspecify every detail. Effective delegation balances direction with autonomy, offering enough structure to ensure success, yet enough freedom to foster initiative, creativity, and ownership. Boundaries are a second pillar. Delegation requires explicit delineation of responsibilities. Those who act on your behalf must understand the limits of their authority and the points at which escalation is required. Boundaries protect both the integrity of the task and the leader's ability to maintain oversight without becoming entangled in minutiae. By defining scope clearly, a leader preserves control while empowering others to act decisively within their domain. Communication is critical throughout the process. Expectations, goals, and timelines must be articulated clearly, and channels for feedback should be established. Delegation is not a one-time handoff. It is a dynamic interaction that requires monitoring without micromanaging. The best leaders cultivate an environment where questions, updates, and insights flow naturally, allowing both accountability and adaptability. Communication ensures that delegated authority remains aligned with vision and standards. The leader's mindset is equally important. Delegation often triggers discomfort, fear that the task will be mishandled, concern that standards will slip, or the internalized habit of carrying everything oneself. These feelings are natural, but they must be managed. Authority does not diminish when responsibility is shared. In fact, it grows. Leaders who embrace delegation recognize that their influence extends beyond individual effort, multiplying through the initiative and skill of others. Delegation also serves as a tool for development. By entrusting responsibility strategically, leaders cultivate competence, confidence, and accountability within their teams. Individuals grow through challenge, learn from mistakes, and internalize standards. A leader who hoards responsibility limits not only personal capacity, but the potential of those they lead. Sharing authority, when done with intention, becomes a method of succession planning, skill building, and empowerment. Monitoring without micromanaging is a delicate balance. Effective leaders establish metrics, checkpoints, and review processes that allow oversight without interference. Oversight ensures quality and alignment, while preserving autonomy and initiative. The temptation to intervene prematurely is strong, particularly when stakes are high. Emotional restraint, patience, and confidence in your team's capacity are critical to sustaining both control and trust. Delegation requires discernment of timing. Some responsibilities demand direct intervention due to urgency, complexity, or strategic significance. Others are better suited for shared management. Recognizing which tasks require your immediate authority and which can be entrusted is a skill developed through experience, reflection, and observation. Strategic timing ensures that your involvement maximizes impact without unnecessary overextension. Emotional mastery supports effective delegation. Anxiety, perfectionism, and fear of failure can sabotage the process. Leaders who manage their emotional response to relinquishing tasks maintain presence, authority, and influence. Confidence in delegation fosters respect, reduces friction, and enables both leader and team to operate at optimal capacity. Emotional clarity turns the act of sharing responsibility from a source of anxiety into a tool of empowerment. Feedback and reflection are integral. After tasks are completed, leaders evaluate outcomes, provide constructive feedback, and recognize achievements. Reflection identifies areas for improvement, strengthens future delegation, and reinforces learning. Celebrating successes and addressing shortcomings cultivates accountability while maintaining morale. The cycle of delegation, assessment, and feedback becomes a mechanism for continuous growth and alignment. The long-term benefits of delegation extend beyond immediate efficiency. Leaders who share responsibility prevent burnout, sustain focus on strategic priorities, and strengthen organizational resilience. Teams become self-reliant, adaptable, and motivated. Authority is no longer a singular weight, but a distributed force capable of navigating complexity with precision and agility. Delegation transforms leadership from a task-based endeavor into a network practice of influence and guidance. Boundaries, trust, communication, and feedback intersect to create a system where delegation enhances control rather than diminishes it. A leader who delegates effectively does not lose authority, they magnify it. By strategically distributing responsibility, they amplify capacity, reinforce standards, and cultivate a culture of accountability and initiative. Authority, when exercised through others, becomes exponential. Resistance to delegation is natural. Leaders may struggle with letting go, questioning competence, or fearing loss of status. These internal conflicts must be addressed deliberately. Reflection, mentorship, and experience teach that control is preserved through strategic oversight, not constant intervention. Relinquishing the illusion of total command is essential to creating a sustainable, high-functioning leadership dynamic. Delegation also requires courage. Entrusting critical tasks to others entails risk. Mistakes may occur, outcomes may diverge from expectation, and control may feel threatened. Yet courage in delegation is the recognition that empowerment, accountability, and growth outweigh the temporary discomfort of imperfect outcomes. The skilled leader leverages calculated risk to strengthen both authority and the organization's capacity. Sustainability is the ultimate goal. Leadership without delegation is heavy, exhausting, and fragile. Responsibility becomes a burden rather than a tool. Delegation allows the leader to focus on strategy, vision, and high-impact decisions, while building capability and resilience within the team. Authority becomes durable because it is exercised through aligned action, collective effort, and distributed competence. Trust, communication, and alignment are continuously reinforced. Leaders must ensure that delegated authority serves both organizational objectives and the standards they uphold. Delegation is not abdication, it is stewardship. By guiding without controlling, monitoring without micromanaging, and supporting without overbearing, leaders maintain influence while fostering initiative and independence. The power of delegation lies in its dual effect. It expands capacity and strengthens influence. Leaders who wield it effectively preserve energy, protect judgment, and amplify impact. They cultivate loyalty, competence, and resilience within their teams, creating an environment where authority is shared strategically, vision is realized collaboratively, and responsibility is sustainable. Delegation, when practiced deliberately, transforms leadership from an isolated exertion into a coordinated force. Authority is no longer a solitary burden but a distributed asset. The leader who masters delegation is not weakened by sharing control. They are empowered by it, creating leverage that extends beyond individual effort into enduring influence, efficiency, and organizational strength. When authority is balanced with trust, clarity, and structured delegation, the weight of responsibility becomes manageable, strategic, and empowering. Leadership thrives not in solitary command, but in the intelligent orchestration of resources, talent, and effort. Delegation converts the potential strain of responsibility into a dynamic system of capability, resilience, and growth. In mastering delegation, the leader preserves both authority and vitality. Tasks are completed, standards are maintained, and vision is advanced without unnecessary strain. Authority is exercised through guidance, oversight, and strategic involvement rather than micromanagement. Teams flourish under empowerment, accountability is reinforced, and the leader's focus is preserved for the decisions that truly shape outcomes. Delegation is the bridge between control and influence. It transforms leadership from a personal exertion into a networked practice of purpose, precision, and power. Authority, shared wisely, becomes not only sustainable but amplified. Leaders who embrace this principle carry responsibility without being crushed by it, extend their influence without compromising standards, and create systems where success is not dependent solely on one individual, but on the collective strength of all who act under their guidance. Chapter 6. Recognizing hidden risks, avoiding the traps of absolute control. Leadership carries inherent risk. Every decision, action, and directive has consequences, some immediate, some delayed, some visible, and some lurking quietly beneath the surface. The greater the authority, the more significant the potential fallout from unforeseen events. Leaders who cling too tightly to control often develop a false sense of security, believing that vigilance and micromanagement can eliminate uncertainty. In truth, absolute control is an illusion. Hidden risks exist in every system, every team, and every strategy. The challenge lies in recognizing them before they manifest, and in building the foresight, discipline, and strategic insight to mitigate their impact. The first step is awareness. Risk is rarely obvious. It hides in assumptions, habits, and blind spots. A leader may focus on visible threats, budget constraints, deadlines, operational hiccups, while overlooking subtle systemic vulnerabilities, morale issues, communication breakdowns, or gaps in succession planning. Hidden risks often grow silently, unnoticed until they become crises. Cultivating awareness requires a disciplined mindset, observing patterns, questioning norms, and actively seeking information beyond immediate or obvious channels. The vigilant leader anticipates what others overlook. Cognitive bias is a common source of hidden risk. Leaders who overestimate their capacity, who rely too heavily on past experience, or who assume loyalty and competence without verification, are vulnerable to misjudgment. Confirmation bias, overconfidence, and selective perception can obscure warning signs and distort reality. Emotional investment in authority can amplify these biases, making it difficult to see threats clearly. Recognizing these tendencies is essential. Self-awareness becomes a protective tool against both personal and organizational missteps. The structure of systems itself can conceal risk. Processes that appear robust on the surface may contain inefficiencies, redundancies, or vulnerabilities. Hierarchies can inhibit communication, creating blind spots where critical information is delayed, filtered, or lost. Dependencies on single individuals or fragile processes create points of failure. Leaders must evaluate systems not only for efficiency, but for resilience, redundancy, and adaptability. A structurally sound organization anticipates risk even before it becomes apparent. Interpersonal dynamics also harbor hidden threats. Teams are composed of individuals with varying motivation, skills, and levels of engagement. Disengagement, resentment, or misalignment can erode performance quietly. Leaders who exercise rigid authority without cultivating trust may inadvertently create environments where people withhold insight, avoid responsibility, or act counterproductively. Recognizing these relational risks requires both observation and dialogue, as well as the ability to read subtle cues that indicate dissatisfaction or misalignment. Information gaps amplify risk. Leaders may believe they have complete oversight, yet critical details can slip through unnoticed. Delegation without verification, assumptions of competence, or insufficient reporting structures create vulnerabilities. Hidden risk thrives in the shadows of incomplete knowledge. Effective leaders establish clear channels for reporting, verification, and feedback, ensuring that decisions are informed by accurate, timely, and comprehensive information. Resistance is another underappreciated risk. Opposition may arise overtly through challenges, complaints, or conflict, or covertly through avoidance, passive aggression, or silent withdrawal. Leaders who fail to recognize early signs of resistance may face disruptions, stagnation, or erosion of authority. Understanding the motivations behind resistance, addressing concerns proactively, and cultivating open communication mitigate these hidden threats. Resistance, when managed strategically, can even serve as a source of insight and improvement rather than disruption. External factors are ever-present risks. Markets shift, technologies evolve, regulations change, and unforeseen crises occur. Leaders who attempt to control only the internal sphere may be blindsided by external events. A broad perspective, continuous environmental scanning, and scenario planning allow leaders to anticipate potential shocks. Preparedness does not guarantee immunity, but it transforms vulnerability into strategic opportunity. Awareness of external risk enhances resilience and informs more deliberate action. The human tendency to underestimate complexity is a significant contributor to hidden risk. Leadership often involves interconnected systems, competing priorities, and emergent challenges. Oversimplifying problems or assuming linear cause and effect can mask vulnerabilities. Leaders must embrace complexity, cultivate curiosity, and encourage diverse perspectives. By acknowledging the multifaceted nature of challenges, they uncover hidden risks that might otherwise remain invisible until it is too late. Accountability mechanisms are essential. Leaders who fail to implement checks, balances, and oversight invite unrecognized failure. Even trusted teams require structures that ensure adherence to standards, verification of outcomes, and detection of anomalies. Systems that enforce accountability reduce the likelihood of hidden risks escalating into crises, allowing leaders to act decisively when issues arise. Authority exercised without such safeguards is fragile, vulnerable to collapse under unexpected pressure. Scenario planning and stress testing are practical tools for risk recognition. Anticipating potential disruptions, simulating responses, and evaluating contingency plans reveal weak points that are often invisible under normal operations. Leaders who invest in foresight and rehearsal create organizations that are resilient, adaptable, and capable of responding effectively to both anticipated and unforeseen challenges. Risk recognition becomes an active, dynamic practice rather than a passive hope. Transparency is a double-edged tool. Excessive secrecy can conceal risk. Thoughtful transparency can expose it. Open communication channels, reporting structures, and opportunities for feedback illuminate vulnerabilities before they escalate. Leaders must balance transparency with confidentiality, ensuring that information flows appropriately to detect and mitigate hidden threats without compromising strategic advantage. Emotional and cognitive discipline play a crucial role in managing hidden risks. Anxiety, overconfidence, or rigid attachment to control can cloud judgment, obscure signals, and create blind spots. Leaders who cultivate calm, reflective, and analytical states are better equipped to identify subtle threats and anticipate consequences. Mastery over self enables mastery over circumstance. The clarity to detect risk emerges from disciplined awareness and measured response. Learning from past missteps is a powerful tool in risk management. Failures, mistakes, and near misses are not merely setbacks, they are data. Leaders who examine outcomes, extract lessons, and adjust processes enhance the organization's ability to detect and respond to hidden risks. Reflection transforms error into insight, and insight into preventative strategy. Patterns of vulnerability become visible through the lens of experience. Delegation and empowerment also play a role in uncovering hidden threats. Team members often possess insights and perspectives that leaders cannot see from their position. By fostering trust, encouraging candid input, and valuing diverse viewpoints, leaders expand their situational awareness. Hidden risks that might escape solitary scrutiny become visible through collective insight. Authority, exercised collaboratively, becomes more robust and resilient. The interplay of foresight, awareness, systems, and relationships is the foundation for risk recognition. Leadership that relies solely on command and control neglects the subtle vulnerabilities inherent in complex human and organizational systems. The effective leader integrates vigilance, reflection, and strategic foresight, transforming potential exposure into proactive management. Risk is inevitable, but failure to recognize it is optional. Ethical and principled leadership reduces hidden risk. Decisions made in haste, under pressure, or without consideration of consequence often generate hidden liabilities. Integrity ensures that actions are aligned with values, standards, and long-term objectives, reducing the likelihood of unforeseen consequences. Authority grounded in principle creates a stable foundation, whereas short-term expediency invites hidden threats that can undermine both outcomes and credibility. Ultimately, the leader's task is to see what others do not, to anticipate what is hidden, and to create structures that withstand uncertainty. Authority is strengthened when risk is acknowledged, assessed, and managed proactively. Vigilance, reflection, and strategic insight allow leaders to navigate complexity without being consumed by it, transforming uncertainty from a threat into an opportunity for decisive, informed action. Recognizing hidden risks is not about fear. It is about preparedness, intelligence, and resilience. It is about creating awareness, structures, and habits that allow the leader to anticipate, mitigate, and respond to challenges before they escalate. Authority becomes purposeful rather than reactive, enabling confident decision-making even under uncertainty. When a leader integrates risk recognition into every decision, every process, and every relationship, the hidden becomes visible, the uncertain becomes manageable, and the weight of authority becomes navigable. True mastery lies not in eliminating risk, but in perceiving it, understanding it, and acting with both caution and courage. Leadership thrives not in comfort, but in the calculated confrontation of hidden threats, transforming potential vulnerability into enduring strength. The leader who sees beneath the surface, anticipates the unseen, and prepares for the unexpected does not merely survive. She guides, protects, and empowers. Authority, exercised with insight and foresight, becomes not a weight but a compass. Risk is neither ignored nor feared. It is recognized, assessed, and integrated into a system of strategic control. This is the essence of resilient, enduring leadership, the capacity to carry responsibility with awareness, clarity, and unshakable presence. Chapter 7. Aligning leadership with values using authority to serve, not dominate. Authority is a powerful instrument. It shapes decisions, influences behavior, and determines outcomes. But without alignment to values, it risks becoming coercion, control, or mere self-interest disguised as leadership. True authority is most effective when it serves a purpose beyond the self, when it channels power in alignment with principle rather than ego. Leaders who integrate values into their decisions and actions transform influence into trust, command into guidance, and responsibility into impact. The first step in aligning leadership with values is self-awareness. You must understand not only what you want to achieve, but why it matters. Values act as a compass, providing direction when choices are difficult, when pressure is intense, and when outcomes are uncertain. Authority without a moral framework is vulnerable to distortion. Decisions made solely for expediency, recognition, or personal gain may produce short-term results, but they erode credibility, morale, and long-term influence. Leaders anchored in principle endure, inspire, and guide with integrity. Clarity of purpose informs every action. Before making critical decisions, pause to reflect. Does this choice align with the standards I uphold? Does it serve the greater mission rather than just immediate convenience? Leaders who consistently evaluate their decisions against values maintain coherence, consistency, and credibility. Authority exercised without this reflection may appear strong, but it is brittle, susceptible to erosion when circumstances challenge expediency over principle. Integrity is the foundation of authority aligned with values. Decisions that prioritize honesty, fairness, and accountability foster trust within teams and organizations. Conversely, compromise of integrity, even in seemingly minor ways, creates hidden vulnerabilities, mistrust, disengagement, and long-term instability. Leaders who embody ethical clarity project confidence, inspire loyalty, and create a culture where responsibility is respected and accountability is expected. Authority gains weight not through dominance, but through alignment with principle. Consistency reinforces this alignment. Values are only meaningful if applied reliably, across situations, and over time. Leaders who shift principles to suit convenience or outcomes quickly erode credibility. Consistency creates predictability, a sense of justice, and a framework for team members to navigate uncertainty. Authority grounded in values is steady, reliable, and respected because it reflects a coherent moral and strategic foundation. Decision-making becomes purposeful when guided by principle. Choices are evaluated not only for efficiency or expedience, but for alignment with ethical, strategic, and human considerations. Leaders weigh outcomes against standards, balancing immediate needs with long-term consequences. Authority exercised in service of values ensures that decisions create benefit rather than harm, coherence rather than chaos, and respect rather than fear. Communication amplifies the impact of values-aligned leadership. Teams and stakeholders must understand not only what is expected, but why decisions are made. Transparency about principles, reasoning, and priorities fosters trust, alignment, and engagement. Authority without explanation may achieve compliance, but it rarely inspires commitment. When values guide communication, influence becomes more than instruction. It becomes shared purpose. Empathy is a critical complement to values in leadership. Recognizing the perspectives, needs, and challenges of others allows decisions to balance principle with pragmatism. Leaders who integrate empathy into authority create environments where people feel understood, supported, and respected. Values become a living practice rather than abstract statements, guiding action in ways that resonate with both purpose and human experience. Accountability ensures alignment is maintained. Leaders who hold themselves responsible for decisions, outcomes, and behavior reinforce the authority of values. Accountability is not punishment. It is a demonstration of integrity, a model for others, and a mechanism for continual refinement. Hidden consequences are mitigated when leaders monitor adherence to principles, evaluate outcomes honestly, and make adjustments when misalignment occurs. Courage is necessary for values-based leadership. Pressure, opposition, or expedience may tempt compromise. Standing by principle in the face of challenge requires conviction, confidence, and resilience. Courage does not eliminate difficulty, but it ensures that authority is exercised with legitimacy and purpose. Leaders who act with courage inspire confidence, loyalty, and respect that endure beyond immediate results. Delegation aligned with values strengthens both authority and impact. When tasks are shared, principles must guide expectations, communication, and oversight. Delegated responsibility aligned with values maintains coherence, ensuring that outcomes reflect both strategy and ethics. Teams internalize standards, adopt similar approaches, and extend the reach of principled authority. Authority multiplies when values are embedded in systems, behaviors, and culture. Reflection and self-assessment reinforce alignment. Leaders who regularly examine decisions, actions, and outcomes against their standards cultivate precision, insight, and adaptability. Reflection is not self-criticism. It is a tool for growth, calibration, and reinforcement of principles. Patterns of alignment and misalignment become evident, allowing leaders to refine strategy, strengthen judgment, and enhance the impact of their authority. Long-term influence is the reward of values-integrated leadership. Authority exercised without principle may yield short-term compliance, but lasting trust and respect require alignment with purpose. Leaders who consistently prioritize integrity, fairness, and ethical coherence cultivate environments where initiative, loyalty, and creativity flourish. Teams act with confidence, follow with commitment, and engage with clarity because the guiding principles are clear and consistent. Balance is essential. Values-based authority is not passive or weak. It does not avoid difficult decisions, defer responsibility, or abdicate action in the face of challenge. Instead, it strengthens decisiveness by providing a clear framework for judgment. Leaders make difficult choices with confidence, knowing that their authority is informed by principle rather than impulse. Strength and compassion coexist when leadership is grounded in aligned values. Systems and processes should reflect values as well. Organizational design, policies, and workflows should reinforce principles, ensuring that authority is exercised consistently and predictably. Systems that align with values reduce hidden risks, provide guidance, and embed ethical coherence into everyday operations. Authority becomes sustainable and scalable when it is reinforced not only by individual decisions, but by the structures that support them. Mentorship and modeling extend the impact of values-aligned leadership. Leaders who act with integrity, fairness, and clarity set the standard for others. Teams internalize these behaviors, norms, and expectations, creating a culture where authority is respected, ethical standards are maintained, and influence is multiplied. Leadership becomes a living example rather than a set of instructions. Conflict is inevitable, but values provide a guide for resolution. Challenges to authority, disagreements, and ethical dilemmas can be navigated with consistency, clarity, and integrity. Decisions rooted in principle minimize subjective bias, personal agendas, and arbitrary outcomes. Authority aligned with values handles tension decisively yet fairly, maintaining both control and trust. Integration of values with authority transforms leadership from a transactional exercise into a strategic, enduring practice. Power is not wielded for dominance, but for purpose. Influence is not enforced through fear, but earned through alignment, clarity, and principle. Responsibility is carried with integrity, creating trust, loyalty, and resilience. Leaders who master this alignment wield authority as a tool of empowerment rather than a mechanism of control. Reflection at the end of each decision reinforces alignment. Leaders who pause to consider whether actions honor their principles, serve the greater purpose, and sustain trust reinforce both personal mastery and organizational coherence. This ongoing practice strengthens judgment, enhances credibility, and ensures that authority remains both effective and ethical. Ultimately, leadership guided by values transcends immediate outcomes. Authority becomes sustainable, influence becomes enduring, and responsibility becomes a vehicle for meaningful impact. Decisions are deliberate, actions are coherent, and outcomes are aligned with both principle and vision. Teams thrive in clarity and fairness, strategy is executed with integrity, and the weight of leadership is carried with purpose rather than burden. Leaders who embody values demonstrate that authority is not an end, but a means. A leader's presence inspires confidence, decisions reinforce trust, and actions model principle. Power exercised with alignment strengthens organizations, uplifts teams, and ensures that influence is both effective and ethical. Authority guided by values is not only respected, it is enduring, transformative, and profoundly influential. When leadership is aligned with values, every decision, every interaction, and every strategy reflects principle, purpose, and clarity. Authority is not a tool of domination, but an instrument of service, guidance, and impact. The leader who integrates values into every action creates a foundation for trust, loyalty, and sustainable success. Leadership becomes a legacy of principle, influence, and purposeful command. Chapter 8. Navigating loyalty and opposition, managing allies and adversaries strategically. Leadership exists in a web of relationships. Authority does not operate in isolation. It is shaped, challenged, and reinforced by the people around you. Allies provide support, insight, and momentum, while opposition tests resilience, judgment, and strategy. A leader who navigates loyalty and resistance with skill not only maintains influence but also strengthens it. Understanding the dynamics of allegiance, dissent, and strategic interaction is critical to sustaining both authority and effectiveness. The first step is observation. Loyalty and opposition rarely announce themselves overtly. They emerge through patterns of behavior, tone of communication, subtle actions, and even silence. Leaders must cultivate an acute awareness of these signals, discerning between genuine commitment, cautious compliance, and covert resistance. Awareness allows for informed action rather than reactive decision-making. Reading relationships accurately is as vital as understanding tasks, strategies, or resources. Trust is the foundation of loyalty. Leaders who inspire confidence, consistency, and integrity cultivate allegiance naturally. Trust is built through transparency, reliability, and alignment between word and action. When people perceive that leadership is principled and dependable, they commit willingly. Loyalty grounded in respect and admiration is durable, capable of weathering challenges and adversity. Conversely, trust that is manipulated, coerced, or conditional is fragile, prone to fracture under pressure. Engagement reinforces loyalty. Leaders who invest in understanding the motivations, strengths, and aspirations of those around them strengthen alignment and commitment. People support leaders who listen, acknowledge effort, and create opportunities for contribution and growth. Engagement is not about appeasement. It is strategic cultivation of relational energy. By fostering a sense of shared purpose, leaders transform compliance into active support and participation. Conflict is inevitable, but opposition is not always destructive. Leaders who approach dissent strategically recognize that resistance often signals important truths, alternative perspectives, or emerging challenges. Opposition can reveal vulnerabilities, blind spots, or opportunities for improvement. Effective leaders do not dismiss or suppress resistance. They assess it, understand its source, and integrate insights into decisions where appropriate. Managing opposition requires discernment, emotional control, and strategic thinking. Boundary setting is crucial. Loyalty does not mean unlimited access, unqualified agreement, or blind obedience. Leaders must define the scope of authority, expectations, and acceptable behavior. Clear boundaries preserve authority while allowing relationships to function productively. Without boundaries, loyalty can become entitlement, and opposition can become disruptive. By defining limits, leaders maintain clarity and control while fostering constructive engagement. Emotional intelligence amplifies effectiveness in navigating relationships. Leaders attuned to their own responses, triggers, and biases are better equipped to manage reactions to both support and resistance. Emotional discipline allows a leader to remain calm when loyalty is tested, when criticism arises, or when adversarial forces challenge authority. Presence under pressure inspires confidence, stabilizes teams, and ensures that influence is exercised deliberately rather than reactively. Strategic alignment strengthens both loyalty and resilience. Leaders must articulate vision, purpose, and values clearly, ensuring that allies understand not just what is expected, but why. Shared understanding fosters commitment and reduces friction. Conversely, misalignment or ambiguity invites confusion, disengagement, and resistance. Leaders who communicate expectations and intentions consistently create clarity, which reinforces authority while nurturing loyalty. Assessment of motivations is a subtle but essential skill. Allies may have varying reasons for support, some rooted in genuine commitment, others in ambition, convenience, or self-interest. Opposition may be principled, self-protective, or opportunistic. Understanding the underlying motivations allows leaders to respond appropriately, to nurture authentic loyalty, to address principled dissent, and to neutralize self-serving resistance without unnecessary conflict. Strategic discernment protects influence and preserves relationships. Delegation interacts with loyalty and opposition. Empowering trusted team members demonstrates confidence and fosters commitment, while misalignment in delegation can provoke frustration, disengagement, or resistance. Leaders who match responsibilities to strengths, provide clarity, and communicate purpose strengthen allegiance while minimizing conflict. Effective delegation is both a practical and relational tool, reinforcing authority through trust and shared accountability. Observation and reflection are ongoing processes. Leaders must continually assess relationships, monitor shifts in behavior, and adapt strategies accordingly. Situations evolve, people change, circumstances shift, and power dynamics fluctuate. Vigilance ensures that loyalty is reinforced, opposition is anticipated, and authority remains coherent. Leadership is not static. It is a continuous navigation of complex interpersonal terrain. Influence is reinforced by fairness and consistency. Favoritism, arbitrary decisions, or inconsistent enforcement of standards undermines loyalty and emboldens opposition. Leaders who act with equity, uphold expectations reliably, and demonstrate impartiality cultivate respect and allegiance. Authority grounded in fairness generates long-term stability, while inconsistency invites disruption and erosion of trust. Managing opposition requires balance. Some challenges must be confronted decisively, others managed with diplomacy, and still others anticipated and diffused proactively. The leader who approaches opposition strategically evaluates both the impact and the source, determining the optimal response to protect objectives, preserve relationships, and maintain authority. Resistance becomes manageable when met with insight rather than reaction. The leader's presence communicates authority. Calm, clarity, and confidence signal control even amid tension. People follow leaders who demonstrate steadiness, decisiveness, and poise. Presence stabilizes teams, reassures allies, and tempers adversarial behavior. Authority is not only exercised through directives, but also through the subtle influence of composed, intentional energy. Information and intelligence are essential tools. Leaders who cultivate accurate knowledge of relationships, intentions, and dynamics can anticipate challenges, reinforce support, and mitigate risks. Insight into alliances, potential rivalries, and emerging threats enables preemptive action. Authority is strengthened by foresight. Awareness transforms uncertainty into informed strategy. Adaptability is a key differentiator. Loyalty can shift, opposition can emerge unexpectedly, and circumstances can change rapidly. Leaders who respond with flexibility, without compromising values or purpose, maintain influence and control. Rigidity invites fracture. Strategic adaptability preserves both authority and relational cohesion. Leadership is the capacity to navigate change while sustaining alignment and impact. Reflection consolidates learning. After navigating conflict, managing loyalty, or addressing opposition, leaders benefit from reviewing outcomes, assessing decisions, and extracting insight. Patterns of behavior, effective strategies, and missteps become visible. Reflection strengthens judgment, informs future action, and enhances the capacity to maintain authority in dynamic relational landscapes. Ethical and principled navigation reinforces legitimacy. Leaders who manipulate loyalty, exploit opposition, or act deceptively may gain short-term advantage, but risk long-term instability and diminished credibility. Alignment with principle ensures that relationships, both supportive and challenging, are managed with integrity, reinforcing both trust and sustainable influence. Strategic cultivation of allies strengthens resilience. Supportive individuals amplify impact, provide insight, and reinforce authority. Leaders who identify, invest in, and empower loyal partners expand influence and create a network capable of responding to challenges collectively. Strength does not reside solely in the leader, but in the alignment and capability of the people who share responsibility and vision. Balancing firmness and flexibility is essential. Leaders must enforce standards, uphold boundaries, and maintain direction, while remaining open to feedback, alternative perspectives, and adaptive strategies. This balance sustains loyalty, mitigates opposition, and ensures that authority is exercised with both effectiveness and legitimacy. Ultimately, leadership is relational. Authority is not an abstraction. It exists in the interactions, commitments, and dynamics between people. Navigating loyalty and opposition requires insight, discernment, and strategy. Leaders who perceive underlying currents, anticipate shifts, and respond with clarity and integrity maintain both control and influence. Authority exercised without relational intelligence is brittle. Influence guided by insight is enduring. When loyalty is cultivated and opposition understood, leadership transforms from a struggle for compliance into a system of aligned energy. Teams operate with clarity, trust deepens, and challenges are met with confidence and strategic foresight. Authority becomes a force of coherence, resilience, and impact rather than coercion. The leader who navigates alliances and adversaries with skill carries the weight of responsibility with precision. Influence is extended through relationships, challenges are anticipated, and authority is reinforced through principle, presence, and strategic action. Loyalty is earned, opposition is managed, and leadership becomes a dynamic, adaptive, and enduring force. In mastering the balance between support and resistance, leaders create stability in uncertainty, coherence in complexity, and strength in both themselves and their teams. Authority exercised with insight, fairness, and strategic foresight becomes a tool of empowerment rather than domination, sustaining impact, trust, and long-term success. Chapter 9. Systems that sustain command, creating structures that protect leaders and teams. Leadership is more than decisions, directives, or personal influence. It is the orchestration of systems that maintain order, clarity, and resilience over time. Authority exercised without structure is fragile, subject to human error, miscommunication, and the inevitable complexity of dynamic environments. Sustainable command relies on creating frameworks that protect both the leader and those they guide, ensuring that responsibility, accountability, and strategic objectives are preserved. The first principle of systemized leadership is clarity. Structures must define roles, responsibilities, and expectations unambiguously. Each member of a team should understand not only what is required, but also how it aligns with the larger mission. Ambiguity invites confusion, delays, and friction. Clarity fosters efficiency, accountability, and alignment. Leaders who invest in clear systems reduce the likelihood of mistakes, misalignment, or unnecessary oversight. Accountability mechanisms are critical. Systems should include checks, balances, and reporting structures that ensure tasks are completed as intended. These mechanisms are not meant to micromanage or diminish autonomy. Rather, they provide safeguards that allow both leaders and teams to operate confidently. Accountability ensures that delegated authority produces consistent results, reinforces standards, and identifies issues before they escalate. Processes must be repeatable and scalable. A system that works once but cannot be replicated under pressure fails the test of durability. Leaders should design processes that produce predictable outcomes across varying circumstances and personnel. Scalability allows teams to expand, adapt, and take on greater responsibilities without compromising standards or efficiency. Systems transform leadership from reactive management into proactive, strategic orchestration. Communication channels are integral. A well-structured system enables information to flow clearly, accurately, and promptly. Leaders must ensure that critical updates, feedback, and insights reach the right people at the right time. Effective communication prevents misunderstandings, aligns expectations, and supports rapid decision-making. Information flow is the lifeblood of systems, sustaining both operational stability and strategic coherence. Delegation operates effectively only within robust systems. Without structures to support accountability, oversight, and coordination, delegated tasks can falter. Leaders must integrate delegation into organizational frameworks, ensuring that responsibilities are clearly defined, progress is monitored, and feedback loops are established. Systems amplify the benefits of delegation, preserving authority while empowering team members to act decisively. Risk management is embedded within structural design. Leaders anticipate potential failures, bottlenecks, and vulnerabilities, creating contingencies that mitigate the impact of errors or unforeseen events. Redundancy, cross-training, and documented procedures protect against the consequences of absence, turnover, or misjudgment. Effective systems anticipate risk rather than react to it, transforming potential chaos into manageable scenarios. Decision-making frameworks enhance consistency and clarity. Leaders benefit from systems that outline procedures for evaluation, prioritization, and escalation. By embedding decision protocols into structure, leaders reduce bias, maintain coherence, and preserve authority even under pressure. Frameworks provide a roadmap for action, allowing complex challenges to be addressed systematically rather than impulsively. Feedback mechanisms sustain system integrity. Continuous assessment, performance review, and iterative improvement are essential components. Leaders must create opportunities for reflection, evaluation, and adaptation, ensuring that systems remain effective as circumstances evolve. A feedback-rich environment strengthens both operations and morale, signaling that structure is not rigid control, but a living, adaptive tool. Training and development are structural priorities. Systems must include mechanisms for skill building, knowledge transfer, and succession preparation. A resilient organization cannot depend solely on the leader. It requires capable individuals who understand processes, standards, and strategic objectives. Training embedded within systems ensures continuity, preserves quality, and cultivates the next tier of leadership. Boundaries are formalized within structure. Clear delineation of authority, responsibility, and accountability prevents overlap, conflict, and overreach. Boundaries protect both leaders and teams, ensuring that authority is exercised appropriately and that individuals operate within defined parameters. Structural boundaries reinforce clarity, consistency, and strategic alignment. Technology and tools enhance structural effectiveness. Digital platforms, documentation systems, and workflow management tools provide transparency, coordination, and efficiency. Leaders must leverage technology to standardize processes, track progress, and communicate expectations. Systems strengthened by appropriate tools are scalable, resilient, and responsive to the demands of complex environments. Integration of ethics and values into systems preserves integrity. Procedures, standards, and protocols should reflect the principles guiding leadership. Authority exercised within structures that honor ethical standards gains legitimacy, trust, and durability. Systems devoid of ethical grounding may achieve efficiency, but they compromise long-term stability, credibility, and alignment with purpose. Monitoring without micromanaging is a hallmark of effective systems. Leaders must track performance, progress, and compliance, but refrain from unnecessary interference. Systems that provide transparency and accountability allow leaders to maintain oversight while preserving autonomy and initiative within their teams. Authority is reinforced through design rather than constant intervention. Crisis preparedness is embedded within structural design. Contingency plans, response protocols, and predefined escalation paths equip teams to act decisively under pressure. Systems that anticipate crises protect both operations and morale, ensuring that leadership remains effective when the unexpected arises. The ability to respond methodically under stress is a direct result of intentional system design. Cultural reinforcement of systems is essential. Structures are only effective when individuals internalize their purpose, processes, and expectations. Leaders cultivate a culture where adherence to systems is seen as supporting shared objectives, rather than restricting creativity or autonomy. Alignment between culture and structure strengthens consistency, reduces friction, and enhances both morale and productivity. Evaluation and adaptation ensure longevity. Systems must evolve alongside changing conditions, challenges, and opportunities. Leaders embed mechanisms for periodic review, analysis, and adjustment, ensuring that structures remain relevant, effective, and aligned with strategy. Flexibility within system design allows authority to adapt without sacrificing standards or control. Strategic delegation, risk management, communication, and accountability converge within systems to create sustainable leadership. Authority is preserved because structures support clarity, responsibility, and consistent action. Teams operate effectively because processes, expectations, and oversight are embedded. Leaders gain capacity, confidence, and foresight by relying on structures that amplify rather than replace judgment. Integration of individual responsibility with systemic support is critical. Systems do not absolve leaders of accountability. Rather, they provide the framework for exercising authority with precision, consistency, and foresight. Leaders can focus on strategic priorities, confident that operational stability, oversight, and compliance are maintained through well-designed structures. Reflection strengthens system efficacy. Leaders periodically evaluate outcomes, monitor alignment with goals, and assess resilience. Continuous improvement ensures that structures remain functional, scalable, and responsive. Systems that evolve with insight preserve authority, reduce risk, and enhance organizational performance. Delegation, accountability, communication, and feedback are reinforced through systemic design. Teams gain autonomy within defined frameworks, while leaders maintain oversight without overextension. Authority becomes sustainable, consistent, and effective, anchored not in personal exertion, but in a network of processes, standards, and aligned effort. Ultimately, systems transform leadership from reactive management into proactive, strategic command. Authority is preserved, responsibilities are distributed, and outcomes are reliable. Teams operate with clarity, consistency, and confidence. Leaders are empowered to focus on vision, strategy, and high-impact decisions rather than being consumed by the weight of operational detail. The leader who invests in systems creates stability in complexity, coherence in chaos, and resilience under pressure. Authority is reinforced through clarity, structure, and alignment, protecting both the leader and the team. Responsibility becomes manageable, performance becomes predictable, and influence becomes enduring. Systems do not diminish power, they sustain it, magnify it, and ensure that leadership remains effective in every circumstance. Sustainable command arises when systems are deliberate, aligned, and adaptive. Structures transform the weight of authority from burden into leverage, creating a framework where strategy, execution, and accountability coexist seamlessly. Leaders who master systemic design carry responsibility with foresight, confidence, and efficiency, securing both their authority and the success of those they guide. Chapter 10. The Alchemy of Influence, Turning Responsibility into Empowerment. Leadership is more than authority. It is transformation. True influence converts responsibility, pressure, and accountability into empowerment, for both the leader and the people they guide. Authority alone can enforce compliance, but influence inspires action, loyalty, and growth. The alchemy of leadership lies in transforming the weight of responsibility into a force that elevates performance, cultivates trust, and generates lasting impact. The first element of this transformation is clarity of vision. Influence begins with purpose. Leaders must articulate not only what needs to be done, but why it matters. Vision provides direction, inspires commitment, and creates a shared understanding of objectives. When people see the rationale behind decisions and feel connected to a larger purpose, authority transcends enforcement. It becomes inspiration. Vision is the catalyst that turns obligation into motivation. Empowerment is rooted in trust. Leaders who demonstrate confidence in their teams foster autonomy and initiative. When people feel trusted to act, they engage more deeply, innovate more freely, and assume responsibility with ownership. Influence grows from a leader's ability to instill confidence, convey expectations clearly, and provide support without unnecessary interference. Authority gains depth when it enables others to act with competence and discretion. Communication is a critical instrument of influence. Leaders must convey intentions, rationale, and expectations in a manner that resonates, motivates, and clarifies. Influence is strengthened by transparency, consistency, and responsiveness. Teams respond not simply to directives, but to the credibility, conviction, and clarity behind those directives. Words and tone shape perception, trust, and engagement. The most effective leaders speak with precision and authenticity. Emotional intelligence amplifies influence. Leaders who recognize, manage, and respond to emotions, both their own and others, create environments where individuals feel understood and valued. Empathy allows leaders to anticipate concerns, adjust messaging, and address resistance with insight rather than reaction. Emotional mastery transforms tension into opportunity, challenges into learning, and conflict into constructive dialogue. Influence is as much about emotional resonance as it is about authority. Delegation, when practiced strategically, becomes a tool of empowerment, assigning responsibility to the right individuals with appropriate guidance and freedom, transforms tasks into opportunities for growth. Teams develop competence, confidence, and ownership. Leaders multiply their impact, not by controlling every action, but by creating channels through which others can act decisively. Influence is magnified when authority is distributed thoughtfully and strategically. Recognition and acknowledgement reinforce empowerment. People respond to leadership that notices effort, celebrates achievement, and values contribution. Praise is not a superficial gesture. It is a reinforcement of competence, alignment, and commitment. Leaders who cultivate recognition generate loyalty, engagement, and momentum. Influence grows where efforts are validated, and successes are integrated into the shared narrative of purpose. Systems and processes support the alchemy of influence. Structures that clarify roles, ensure accountability, and provide resources create an environment where people can perform effectively. Authority embedded within functional systems becomes less about oversight and more about enabling optimal action. Influence thrives in an ecosystem where guidance, support, and clarity coexist. Feedback is a transformative tool. Leaders who provide constructive, timely, and specific feedback enhance performance, develop skills, and reinforce expectations. Influence grows when teams see leadership as a source of growth, insight, and support rather than judgment or control. Feedback, delivered with intention, shapes behavior, strengthens competence, and cultivates trust. Vision must align with values to sustain influence. Decisions guided by principle reinforce legitimacy and respect. Teams respond to leaders whose authority is rooted in integrity and ethical clarity. Influence is fragile when authority is perceived as arbitrary or self-serving. It becomes enduring when it reflects coherence between words, actions, and values. The alchemy of influence is inseparable from the moral compass guiding leadership. Resilience enhances impact. Leaders who navigate adversity with composure, adaptability, and clarity model behavior that inspires confidence. Influence is strengthened not in calm, predictable conditions, but in moments of pressure, uncertainty, and challenge. Those who observe steady, decisive leadership under duress are motivated to emulate, trust, and follow. Responsibility becomes a beacon when carried with resilience. Strategic alignment of tasks and talent magnifies empowerment. Assigning responsibilities that match strengths, skills, and motivation creates natural ownership. People perform at their best when tasks resonate with capability and opportunity. Leaders who understand their team's strengths leverage authority to maximize effectiveness, turning oversight into partnership and responsibility into collaborative achievement. Conflict, when approached constructively, can also enhance influence. Leaders who navigate disagreement with fairness, insight, and composure demonstrate credibility and wisdom. Opposition is reframed as feedback and perspective, contributing to refined strategy and stronger outcomes. Influence is strengthened when challenges are addressed with confidence rather than reaction, guiding teams through uncertainty with authority grounded in competence. The alchemy of influence integrates foresight, empathy, and strategic clarity. Leaders anticipate needs, understand motivations, and align resources to optimize performance. Authority becomes a tool of guidance rather than enforcement, transforming responsibility into a platform for growth. Influence emerges as a natural consequence of preparation, presence, and deliberate action. Mentorship extends the transformative power of influence. Leaders who invest in developing others multiply their impact exponentially. Knowledge, insight, and strategic thinking cascade through the organization, empowering new leaders while reinforcing systems of competence and accountability. Authority is amplified when it cultivates future capacity rather than consuming energy in isolation. Reflection reinforces empowerment. Leaders who evaluate outcomes, learn from successes and missteps, and adjust strategies demonstrate adaptability and commitment to continuous improvement. Influence is strengthened when authority is exercised with insight, humility, and responsiveness. The ability to integrate lessons transforms experience into guidance, responsibility into mentorship, and authority into enduring impact. Recognition of interdependence enhances leadership alchemy. Influence is not a solitary phenomenon. It emerges through relationships, networks, and collaborative action. Leaders who foster alignment, connection, and mutual accountability create environments where authority and influence are reinforced across levels. Responsibility becomes shared energy rather than isolated burden. Innovation and initiative flourish under empowered leadership. Teams who feel supported, trusted, and aligned take ownership, generate solutions, and extend the reach of strategy. Influence is magnified when autonomy is balanced with guidance, freedom with accountability, and creativity with purpose. Leaders who catalyze growth transform responsibility into a platform for collective achievement. Sustainability of influence relies on equilibrium. Authority must balance direction with autonomy, expectation with support, and oversight with empowerment. Excessive control stifles initiative. Absence of guidance breeds disorder. The alchemy of influence lies in calibrating presence, involvement, and freedom to achieve optimal performance without overextension. Integration of insight, emotional mastery, and systems ensures that empowerment is both effective and lasting. Leaders who combine strategic vision with relational intelligence create environments where responsibility is shared, trust is cultivated, and authority is respected. Influence is not imposed. It is earned, reinforced, and perpetuated through deliberate action and thoughtful structure. Ultimately, the alchemy of influence transforms the weight of leadership into opportunity. Responsibility becomes a tool of empowerment, authority becomes a source of trust, and oversight becomes guidance. Teams thrive, objectives are achieved, and leaders preserve energy while magnifying impact. Influence is no longer an abstract concept. It is a tangible outcome of principled, strategic, and emotionally intelligent leadership. Leaders who master this transformation carry authority with confidence, clarity, and foresight. Responsibility is no longer a burden, but a catalyst for growth, alignment, and achievement. Influence is extended naturally through vision, trust, and strategic action, creating environments where people act decisively, purposefully, and in alignment with shared objectives. Leadership becomes an enduring force, capable of shaping outcomes, developing talent, and sustaining success over time. The weight of responsibility is transformed into energy that elevates, empowers, and inspires. Authority becomes a source of guidance rather than control. Influence is cultivated through clarity, integrity, and presence. Leadership reaches its apex when responsibility is alchemized into empowerment, leaving a legacy of competence, trust, and enduring impact. Chapter 11. Shadows integrated balancing authority, burden, and strategy. Leadership is a study in contrasts. Authority brings influence, yet it carries weight. Responsibility empowers, yet it can overwhelm. Command offers clarity, yet it can isolate. The most effective leaders are those who confront these dualities directly, integrating both the visible and hidden aspects of power, control, and responsibility. Shadows, the fears, limitations, and unexamined impulses, exist alongside strength, vision, and decisiveness. Mastery comes not from denial, but from integration. The first step in shadow integration is recognition. Leaders must acknowledge the full spectrum of their tendencies, including ambition that borders on obsession, authority that risks rigidity, and responsibility that teeters on overextension. Awareness of these patterns allows for deliberate management. Shadows are not weaknesses to suppress, but signals to understand, address, and channel productively. Integration begins with seeing oneself fully, without judgment, yet without evasion. Self-reflection is essential. Regularly examining decisions, motivations, and emotional responses illuminates hidden tendencies. Why did a choice provoke resistance or tension? Which actions were motivated by principle, and which by fear, ego, or compulsion. By facing these questions honestly, leaders gain insight into the forces shaping their authority and the impact of their presence. Shadows hold lessons as potent as any visible strategy. Emotional regulation strengthens integration. Leadership exposes individuals to stress, criticism, and scrutiny. Shadows often emerge in these moments as impatience, defensiveness, or rigidity. Leaders who cultivate emotional resilience navigate tension without surrendering clarity. Awareness of internal triggers allows them to respond intentionally, not reactively. Mastery of emotions transforms potential vulnerability into strategic advantage. Strategic discernment is amplified by shadow awareness. Understanding one's own blind spots, insecurities, and impulsive tendencies allows for more deliberate planning. Leaders who acknowledge the parts of themselves that seek control excessively, resist vulnerability, or fear loss of influence can design strategies that balance oversight with delegation, firmness with flexibility, and ambition with sustainability. Shadows, once recognized, inform stronger, more adaptive decision-making. Integration requires honesty with others. Leaders who acknowledge limits, solicit perspectives, and welcome constructive feedback build trust and credibility. Transparency regarding challenges, uncertainties, or past missteps signals humility and authenticity. Influence is strengthened when authority is exercised in partnership with insight from those around you, rather than in isolation or self-protective secrecy. Boundaries protect both authority and well-being. Recognizing shadows prevents overcommitment, enabling leaders to establish limits without fear of appearing weak or disengaged. Authority exercised without boundaries is vulnerable to burnout, mismanagement, and erosion of influence. Integrated leaders understand that sustainability depends on measured exertion, delegation, and prioritization. Shadows remind leaders where boundaries are most needed. The integration of shadow also enhances empathy. Leaders who confront their own vulnerabilities are better equipped to perceive the experiences, struggles, and motivations of others. Understanding personal shadows informs insight into team dynamics, resistance, and potential conflict. Empathy rooted in self-awareness strengthens relationships, loyalty, and collaboration, transforming leadership from command into partnership. Decision-making benefits from shadow integration. Leaders who recognize their tendencies toward over-control, impulsivity, or perfectionism can implement checks, balance mechanisms, and feedback loops. Choices become deliberate, informed, and resilient, reducing the risk of mistakes fueled by ego or fear. Authority guided by integrated self-awareness is both assertive and flexible, decisive yet measured. Reflection after action reinforces learning. Leaders who analyze outcomes, identifying where shadows influence decisions positively or negatively, refine judgment over time. Patterns of behavior become visible, and conscious intervention allows for ongoing correction. Integration is not a one-time exercise. It is a continuous process of observation, assessment, and adjustment. Risk management is enhanced when shadows are acknowledged. Awareness of personal blind spots, emotional triggers, and vulnerabilities allows leaders to anticipate mistakes, respond to challenges proactively, and safeguard both teams and objectives. Recognizing the potential for misjudgment creates space for contingencies, collaboration, and strategic foresight. Shadows illuminate threats invisible to unexamined authority. Delegation is informed by shadow integration. Leaders who understand tendencies toward micromanagement, perfectionism, or mistrust can structure delegation to balance oversight with autonomy. Empowering capable team members mitigates the risk of overextension while cultivating competence and confidence. Authority becomes sustainable when tempered by insight into personal limitations and potential overreach. Influence is strengthened through consistency and integrity. Leaders who confront and manage shadow tendencies maintain alignment between values, actions, and communication. Predictable, principled behavior fosters trust, loyalty, and confidence. Integration transforms authority from the projection of force into the exercise of deliberate, coherent influence. Shadows, once managed, reinforce rather than undermine leadership. Shadow integration also enhances adaptability. Leaders who understand their own resistance to change, fear of failure, or need for control can anticipate challenges, pivot strategy when necessary, and maintain composure under pressure. Flexibility emerges not from compromise of principle, but from conscious understanding of internal patterns and their potential impact on external circumstances. Strategic patience is cultivated through integration. Leaders who recognize impulsive tendencies learn to pause, observe, and assess before acting. Decisions are informed, measured, and deliberate rather than reactive. Authority guided by both insight and restraint carries more weight than power asserted in haste or arrogance. Shadows teach timing as much as vigilance. Conflict resolution benefits from integration. Leaders aware of their own emotional triggers and biases approach disputes with clarity, empathy, and strategic purpose. Understanding personal shadows allows for measured response, transforming potential escalation into opportunity for resolution and alignment. Influence is extended not through domination, but through intelligent navigation of tension. Sustained authority arises from balance. Leaders who integrate shadows understand the interplay of power, responsibility, and relational dynamics. Oversight is tempered with trust, ambition with patience, and control with delegation. Strength is expressed not through unchecked assertion, but through conscious application of insight, foresight, and principle. Integrated shadows transform potential weakness into a source of strategic advantage. Mentorship and modeling are enhanced through shadow awareness. Leaders who openly acknowledge challenges, growth areas, and lessons demonstrate authenticity. Teams observe that mastery is not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to confront, manage, and learn from it. Influence is amplified when leadership is both aspirational and human, showing that authority coexists with reflection, humility, and self-awareness. Systems and processes benefit from leaders who integrate shadows. Structures can be designed to compensate for blind spots, reinforce consistency, and distribute oversight. Authority embedded in adaptive systems reduces vulnerability, strengthens sustainability, and ensures that both tasks and people are supported effectively. Integration magnifies impact by combining personal insight with structural intelligence. The ultimate reward of shadow integration is resilience. Leaders who embrace both strengths and vulnerabilities navigate complexity with composure, clarity, and strategic insight. Authority is exercised not from a place of fear, ego, or overcompensation, but from a foundation of self-knowledge, balance, and conscious choice. Burden becomes manageable, influence becomes enduring, and leadership becomes both potent and sustainable. Reflection at the close of each challenge strengthens integration. Leaders who assess decisions, relationships, and outcomes with awareness refine judgment, reinforce alignment with values, and prepare for future responsibility. Shadows inform strategy. Authority is reinforced through deliberate awareness. Mastery is measured not by absence of difficulty, but by the capacity to navigate it consciously and effectively. Integrated leadership transforms complexity into coherence. Authority is exercised with insight rather than impulse. Responsibility is balanced rather than overwhelming, and influence is extended through both action and example. Teams function with clarity, confidence, and trust because leadership models both strength and reflective wisdom. Shadows, once acknowledged and integrated, become the hidden fuel of enduring mastery. In the balance of light and shadow, authority finds its fullest expression. Responsibility is carried with confidence, influence is wielded with intention, and strategy is executed with foresight. Leadership becomes a dynamic equilibrium, capable of sustaining challenge, inspiring loyalty, and producing meaningful impact. Shadows are no longer hidden liabilities. They are integrated assets, shaping a leader who is both formidable and wise. Chapter 12. Sovereign Leadership: Living with Mastery, Influence, and Legacy. True leadership is a solitary weight and a shared force. It demands presence, clarity, and the courage to act decisively while remaining deeply aware of impact. Sovereign leadership is not about title, acclaim, or external recognition. It is the seamless integration of authority, insight, and principle into a mode of being that guides others, sustains teams, and preserves personal integrity. At this level, leadership becomes both an art and a responsibility carried with precision, awareness, and enduring influence. Sovereign leaders embrace total accountability. Every decision, action, and outcome rests squarely on their shoulders. They understand that responsibility cannot be delegated. It can only be managed, shared strategically, or mitigated through systems, processes, and empowered teams. The weight of command is acknowledged and harnessed, not resisted or ignored. This recognition transforms burden into purpose and influence into meaningful action. Presence is the foundation of sovereign authority. Leaders who carry themselves with composure, clarity, and intent inspire trust without the need for constant assertion. Presence communicates confidence, consistency, and mastery. It signals to teams, allies, and even challengers that leadership is not reactive or impulsive, but grounded in experience, foresight, and deliberate choice. Presence, more than words or directives, conveys the depth and certainty of command. Clarity of vision defines the scope of authority. Leaders articulate purpose, strategy, and objectives with precision, ensuring that everyone understands not only what is expected, but why it matters. Vision unites action with meaning, transforming compliance into commitment, tasks into aligned effort, and responsibility into collective achievement. Sovereign leadership relies on insight into both the present reality and the long-term trajectory of decisions and influence. Emotional mastery underpins resilience. Leaders at this level are attuned to their own internal landscape, aware of triggers, biases, and vulnerabilities. Emotional intelligence allows them to respond rather than react, to maintain composure under scrutiny, and to inspire confidence in others even in moments of uncertainty or pressure. Authority guided by emotional mastery is steady, credible, and enduring. Strategic delegation becomes an instrument of empowerment. Sovereign leaders recognize that absolute control is neither sustainable nor effective. By entrusting capable individuals with responsibility, providing clarity of expectation, and maintaining oversight through structured systems, leaders preserve their energy, sustain influence, and cultivate growth in others. Delegation, when executed thoughtfully, multiplies the reach and depth of leadership. Integrity forms the core of sovereign influence. Decisions and actions are guided by principle, not convenience, fear, or personal gain. Leaders who maintain consistency between values, words, and actions earn enduring trust, loyalty, and respect. Authority exercised with integrity transcends positional power, transforming influence into a lasting force that shapes culture, aligns effort, and inspires commitment. Legacy is both an outcome and a mindset. Leaders who operate with foresight understand that their actions ripple beyond immediate results. Every choice shapes organizational culture, influences team behavior, and sets standards that endure. Sovereign leadership considers the long-term impact of authority, ensuring that influence is constructive, principles are upheld, and foundations are laid for sustained achievement beyond one individual's tenure. Decision-making at this level is deliberate and informed. Leaders integrate insight from data, observation, and feedback with instinct, experience, and foresight. Sovereign leaders weigh both immediate outcomes and long-term consequences, balancing urgency with patience, assertiveness with reflection. Choices are neither rash nor avoidant. They are calculated, purposeful, and aligned with overarching objectives. Conflict is navigated with skill and discernment. Leaders recognize that resistance, disagreement, and challenge are inevitable. Sovereign leadership addresses opposition with clarity, fairness, and strategic intent, converting tension into insight and engagement. The ability to handle conflict decisively yet judiciously preserves authority, sustains trust, and reinforces the legitimacy of command. Systems and structures are fully integrated into operational strategy. Sovereign leaders ensure that processes, communication channels, and accountability mechanisms function autonomously, supporting decision-making, enabling oversight, and protecting both teams and authority. Structures are not static. They are adaptive, resilient, and aligned with vision. Leadership is amplified through the combination of personal mastery and systemic support. Mentorship and development of others are essential aspects of lasting influence. Leaders who cultivate talent, share insight, and create pathways for growth extend authority beyond themselves. Empowered individuals carry forward standards, principles, and capabilities, reinforcing both operational strength and strategic continuity. Influence becomes compounded through the cultivation of capable successors. Adaptability and foresight distinguish sovereign leaders. They anticipate challenges, monitor evolving dynamics, and pivot strategy without compromising values or long-term goals. Flexibility coexists with consistency, responsiveness aligns with stability, and vigilance is matched by trust. Leaders navigate complexity with composure, ensuring that both teams and objectives remain aligned under changing conditions. Reflection and self-assessment are ongoing practices. Sovereign leaders evaluate outcomes, integrate lessons, and adjust approaches. They examine the influence of decisions on people, objectives, and culture, refining judgment with each experience. Continuous reflection transforms experience into insight, authority into wisdom, and responsibility into enduring capability. Balance is essential. Leaders harmonize action with reflection, control with delegation, ambition with patience, and strategy with empathy. Mastery is not expressed through overextension, domination, or rigidity, but through measured, deliberate, and principled exercise of authority. Equilibrium sustains both performance and presence, ensuring leadership is effective without being exhausting or brittle. Influence becomes transformative. Sovereign leaders shape not only outcomes but behavior, culture, and perception. Decisions resonate, standards are internalized, and principles are mirrored throughout teams and organizations. Authority ceases to be imposed externally. It is internalized, respected, and enacted collectively. Leadership reaches its full expression when influence multiplies across people, systems, and decisions. The weight of responsibility is embraced, not feared. Leaders carry it with clarity, resilience, and strategic foresight. Burden becomes an instrument of empowerment, stress is transformed into focus, and accountability into opportunity. Sovereignty is the capacity to navigate complexity, maintain alignment with values, and execute strategy without losing composure, vision, or integrity. Legacy is intentional. Every action, decision, and interaction contributes to a broader pattern that outlasts the leader. Principles, culture, and competence are transmitted through both example and structure. Authority is exercised with an awareness of its ripple effect, ensuring that influence continues to shape outcomes, reinforce standards, and cultivate capability long after individual presence diminishes. Ultimately, sovereign leadership is the culmination of mastery, influence, and responsibility. It is the alignment of vision with action, power with principle, and authority with empathy. Leaders who reach this level carry the weight of command without being crushed by it. They inspire, protect, and elevate, creating systems, structures, and relationships that endure. Authority becomes sustainable, influence transformative, and responsibility a source of purpose rather than burden. In sovereign leadership, every decision is deliberate, every action purposeful, and every interaction aligned with both principle and vision. The leader becomes a steady force amidst complexity, a source of clarity amid uncertainty, and a model of balance amid pressure. Sovereignty is the integration of authority, mastery, and insight into a form that is both potent and enduring. The journey of leadership, with its burdens, challenges, and responsibilities, reaches its apex in the ability to guide, influence, and inspire with precision and integrity. Sovereign leaders carry the weight of command gracefully, transforming obligation into empowerment, complexity into clarity, and authority into enduring legacy. Leadership, fully realized, is both a privilege and a responsibility met with skill, awareness, and unwavering purpose.